Hi there, welcome to the show. Many of you in India hope that the Delhi Commonwealth Games would place your country at the centre of the world's attention, but you may not have had the past few days in mind. Thousands of you around the world have been emailing the BBC as problems with the Athletes' Village, the infrastructure and the venues have made headlines. Online, you're talking about if Delhi should ever have been given the Games, if this is more about Western arrogance than Indian incompetence, and whether India's work culture needs to change. So it's unlikely we're going to go short of issues to discuss. Here is how to take part. Call us on country code 44 2070 83 72 72. You can text us from your mobile phone on country code 44 7786 20 60 80, or you can email us at worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com, or add a comment on the blog at worldhaveyoursay.com. And if those weren't enough ways to get in touch, you can also get us Twitter and Facebook as well. worldhaveyoursay.com has all the details. Keeping me company in the studio is Owen Gibson, sports news correspondent with The Guardian newspaper. Thanks for coming in, Owen.
Hello.
I know we've got a few people who've got issues with how the Western media has been covering this, and I know that you're happy to respond to those. But first of all, let's speak to Dheeraj. He's in the BBC studio in Delhi, and yesterday he sent the BBC an email titled Letter of Apology from an Indian citizen. Dheeraj, why are you saying sorry?
Well, I'm saying sorry because the state of affairs a few days back were really bad, but then now the scene has changed. We've turned it around, and I mean, the games are happening. And the question earlier was, will they happen? But now the question is, well, how well will they happen?
But do you feel ashamed that so many question marks have existed this week, so close to the beginning of the games?
Well, I really won't call it that I was ashamed, but yes, it did set in a feeling of disappointment, and it's a matter of country's pride out there, and we really want to put the best foot forward and do well. So that's what we, as Indian citizens, wanted, and we were let down by a few people. So, but yes, we've turned it around, and the games are happening. All the teams are coming, and the show is on.
So you're feeling a lot more positive than you did at the beginning of the week. Any of you watching BBC World News in India, or maybe you're Indian and living outside of the country, you can call us up now live. Country code 44 2070 83 72 72. Well, Dheeraj wasn't the only person who's been critical of these games. John Coates is the head of Australia's Olympic Committee. He's now suggesting Delhi should never have got the games.
In hindsight, no. They shouldn't have been awarded the games. I think the problem is that the Commonwealth Games Federation is under-resourced. It doesn't have the ability, clearly the ability to monitor the progress of cities in a way that the Olympic Committee does.
So that's one Australian. Here's another. David in Melbourne's emailed the BBC to say India has had enough time to get its act together. The whole thing is a shambles. I doubt that anyone will be awarding India any major sporting event in the future. Who knows how they got the games in the first place? Well, Owen Gibson, you've been listening to all of this criticism. Do you think it was a mistake to give Delhi the games at all?
I don't think it was a mistake to give them the games at all. I think that, the bid was a good one. The vision was a good one. It's just the execution that has been found slightly lacking. And I think some of the criticism there is fair in that the Commonwealth Games Federation perhaps should be better resourced and take a firmer hand in policing the run-up to these games in the way that the IOC or FIFA do. They're a very small body. They've only got 5 full-time staff in comparison to those large international organisations. There would be questions about whether or not it could afford those extra people, but I think the events of the last few days have shown the disadvantages of not doing that and not keeping on top of it. And of course, the Indian government, the Delhi government, and the Indian Olympic Commission must take their share of the blame as well. Very much so. I mean, they're the ones who promised to be at certain staging posts and just didn't get there.
But it is worth mentioning, because I know a lot of you have been emailing me saying, you've got to mention this, Ros. Mike Fennell, the Commonwealth Games Federation president, did move to Delhi much earlier than expected to oversee the preparations because he knew that there were problems. Clearly, he wasn't able to address all of them, with particular reference to that bridge near the main stadium and the Athletes' Village. Well, let's get another view from India. Narit Hagbal is with us from Mumbai, and like many of you, he's emailed the BBC. This is your best way of getting onto World Have Your Say. And tell us, sir, do you think it was a mistake to give Delhi the games?
It wasn't a mistake to give Delhi the games, but the way the last 1 week or 2 weeks have been handled is a complete mistake. So you need to understand where the developing markets come from, developing economies come from, and where the Western economies come from. The developing markets are a bunch of people with ample yet fragmented opportunities. They have to be optimistic, they're entrepreneurial in their nature, and they are flexible. They're used to flexibility. While the people who are coming in from the West are coming from low growth, process-centric, cautious, certainty-seeking economies with very little room for error. Now, look at the reactions that have come in. The reactions have come in from developed world athletes who have already got medals in the Olympics and are preparing for the next Olympics, and they're saying, oh, I won't come in. Now, the media has obviously hyped up 2 withdrawals of athletes out of 7,000, and 1 country seeking a delay out of the 70 countries and said, oh, the games won't happen. The headlines were the games won't happen. Mm-hmm. And there's no denial from the Commonwealth Organizing Committee. It's taken about 48 hours. Now, when this gets headline status, a mum sitting in Canada is obviously not going to allow her kid to come in here and run. So it's obvious. So we should have handled this with a bit of caution, knowing fully well that this is an emerging market.
Harriet, you're far from the only person to raise this issue of the media coverage. I'll give Owen a chance to defend himself in a moment. But first of all, let me read you this email from Gulab, who's also in Mumbai. He says, I fail to understand why the Western media only show the dark side and the negative side of the games. And I don't know if we can pull up on the screen. We've got a screenshot of The Guardian. Well, here we go. Look, here we go. Commonwealth Games, fate to be decided within 48 hours. Owen, your story, that same story, did have 48 hours to save the games. The headline seems to have been tinkered. Do you think you've been sensationalist?
I don't think so, no. I mean, all we're doing there is reporting what various home nations, the English team, the Scottish team, and in fact also Canada, Australia, New Zealand were all saying at the time, which was we're going to decide in the next 48 hours whether we're going to go or not.
How many teams are going to these games?
Altogether, more than 70, yeah.
Right. That's 5 or 6, mostly from wealthy, developed nations. Some people would say, so what if they don't turn up? It doesn't mean the games is going to fail. If England doesn't show up, the other 69 will get on with it.
Well, I think if any nation has started to seriously pull out of the games, that would have led to a domino effect where others would have also done so. And you have to remember that some of the main medal contenders are obviously from those countries in some of the big events, athletics, swimming. And without those countries, I think it would just be a much diminished games with a shadow hanging over it. So it's very important that those countries went. But I do accept that the media has a responsibility to show both sides. And I'm sure if it does turn out to be a wonderful fortnight of sport, then that will be reflected. And
that'll be on the front page of The Guardian as well, will it?
But we may well see, in 2 weeks' time that it has been turned around and we're looking at a very different picture. But we simply, report the situation as it was. And there's no doubt that, from our correspondents on the ground and from the rest of the world's media, that it was a very dire situation 2 days ago.